They're free. They're free. Yes, you guys probably know who I'm talking about. We're talking about the Revival. They're finally been released from WWE after what, almost a year they've been questioning. But on this special episode, we're going to have a little talk about them, about how they were trying to make an impact in WWE, but they weren't. They were being buried many times over, and now they're being released. So let's get started with this episode of Deleted WrestleZone.
Are you ready? Get up, get up! 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 Get up, get up!
All right. So the Revival is now being officially been released by the WWE effectively immediately. Um, I know a lot of fans are excited and happy that they are released from WWE. Um, Now that people are talking, they're saying, "Oh, they're going to go with AEW." Now we still don't know yet because of the current situation is happening in the rest in the world with the whole pandemic crisis and all this other stuff. But let's talk about the Revival. Like, who are they? Like, what they played an important role here in pro wrestling. So, if you guys must know, these guys are two-time NXT Tag Team Champions, two-time Raw Champions, one-time SmackDown Tag Team Champions. So, on a technicality, they are Triple Crown champions because they've been champions on all three brands. Now, I wasn't a fan of the Revival at first, not until I saw them on Being the Elite. If you remember, for all you Elite fans out there, they were doing the FTR, which initially stands for F the Revival. So that is something that kind of that's been spreading throughout the pro wrestling world for especially non WWE fans. You hear that in Ring of Honor, you hear that in any other promotion that's outside of WWE, and they ran with it, and not even that. The Revival ran with it too. Uh, they were calling FTR Forever the Revival, and that was like something that stuck with them too, and that kind of became like a feud between them. Um, when I first started seeing them, they were like, um, they come out saying that their tag team has become more of a lost art form, and you know what? I have to agree with it because I grew up watching guys like the Legion of Doom, the Hardy Boys. Those guys had a certain type of artistic um, look when it comes to tag team. Let's talk about the Legion of Doom. They had a unique look, like they were wearing those football gear protectors with the spikes, the paint face, animal with the mohawk, hawk with the two mohawks. That is something that you don't never saw right from the start, and that was pretty good. And it ran with it, and that's what made me a fan of tag team. And then you look at the Hardy Boys; these guys were insane doing extreme stuff. Tables, ladders, and chairs. They put their bodies throughout the line. You don't see many tag teams doing that the way they were doing at the time, and I see many tag teams are had their own artistic art form, and the Revival are no exception because they have tried to do that. And if you must know, if you recall, during NXT, they have been one of the top tag teams with the biggest feuds, with DIY, um, Authors of Pain, and several others. And that what made them who they are. But as we all know, those who watch WWE or fans of WWE, they all know once you go called to the main roster, they're like, you get lost in the shuffle or you're not being utilized a lot. And that's what was happening to them when they went to the main roster. They weren't being utilized. Now, let's go back to the start of 2019. What happened in 2019? I'll tell you what happened. It was the launch of AEW. Now, if you recall from reports that were coming in, they had a rally that took place on the same day as SmackDown in early January. And reports were coming in from Wrestling Observer, if I can recall. Many of the WWE stars were on mute on their phones watching the rally that took place in at the stadium where the Jacksonville Jaguars play at, and they were like looking to keep their options open because we know there's have been wrestlers over time that were unhappy with their positions being at the WWE, and the Revival are one of those guys. Now, why does this play an important role, important part in the Revival? Well, the truth be told, Nick Jackson and Matt Jackson, the Young Bucks, always been one of the most top tag team duos of all time. They've been wrestling around the world. They so far obtained many championships throughout their wake, and it's what made them who they are. And I say their style is also part of the artistic form that I talked about. You know, they fit in the same category as the Legion of Doom, the Hardy Boys. Not to mention they had great rivalries with the Motor City Machine Guns, the Hardys, the Lucha Brothers. You know, we can go on and on as much as possible. But the Revival are one of those guys that say they are too. But as soon as they saw, when they heard Nick Jackson said that they want to make tag team a top priority, make it the best tag team division in the world, and they weren't lying. You look at some of the best tag team matches they had in AEW, they actually kept up to that to their word, you know, and that is something that the Revival has been always been interest because they see, yeah, these guys are exactly throwing exactly what they were trying to do. They kept it the way they said, and the Revival are no exception. Like they felt they should be in there, and now for months, for almost a year, for 16 months, they've been requesting the release. WWE hand them the Raw tag team titles, thinking that kind of would change their mind. It didn't. They decided to bury them by putting them in these comedy things. Like, who can recall where they were shaming each other's backs and the Usos were watching? That was one of them, and that's when they put stuff on them, and that kind of became, and the Revival ran with it. They stuck to their guns, like they took it like very professionally. Like even though no matter what WWE tried to do to make them change their mind and make them trying to re-sign their contract, it wasn't working. That it was the initial problem that they were facing, realizing the Revival is not joking. I mean, who could forget about Dean Ambrose, or should we say now known as John Moxley? He did not resign. Now WWE thought with Dean Ambrose that, oh, when he left, he's gonna come back. Sure enough, he showed up at Double or Nothing, and that kind of, how do I say, blew in WWE's faces because that's what many fans thought it was going to happen. If you talk to a hardcore fan, they're saying, "What do you think of Dean Ambrose going to AEW?" You know what their response will be? Nope, never going to happen. And guess what? It happened. Same thing happened with Jake Hager. Like, what makes you guys so certain that the Revival won't go to AEW? But the significant about this is now there were reports saying they did not get the 90-day no compete clause. Now, why is that an important thing to talk about? Well, we have seen wrestlers that, in fact, when they're released, WWE gives them a 90-day no compete clause. We had that with Luke Harper. We had that with Ty Dillinger, known now as Brody Lee and Sean Spears. Now, these are the individuals that got um, the 90-day no complete clause since their release from WWE. But Dean Ambrose, or should we say now John Moxley, never got the 90-day no complete clause because I don't know if they thought, oh, he was going to return, but it didn't happen. Now with the Revival in this situation, what's happening, we don't know yet because we know that AEW are not doing any more tapings. At this point, Double or Nothing could be in jeopardy because if you look at it, WWE tried to play a smart game here, tried to ensure that any wrestlers that were released, they know for a fact that their careers can be reinvented. You look at Dean Ambrose, he got reinvented as John Moxley, and everybody loved him. And that's the same thing with Ty Dillinger, known as Sean Spears, and that kind of changed a lot of things. The initial problem that Vince and WWE have when it comes to wrestlers being released, they become better than ever because they weren't being utilized like they originally thought. And now with this whole crisis going on, WWE thinks, oh, it's not going to happen. They're not going to put them on TV. But here's the way I would see it. Even though with this whole situation happening, I could see this. They could sign them, but they have to figure out a way how to introduce them. Something that may or may not have done before. That's how I would see it. But we still don't know yet. We don't know how long this whole thing is going to happen. Now, as for the revival with their name, the revival, there is a possibility that we may not hear that name. So they filed some trademark names this year. There was the first one I heard. It was Top Guys. I mean, that's it looks like a good name. And then there's No Flips, Just Fists. Now that name was becoming more of a feud between WWE. They actually WWE filed a trademark, but there was a difference. Um, Apparently there was a comma in between no flips and no fits, like right at the end of flips and the start of just fists. That kind of led to Revival to say, we're not, you can't do this to us because you forgot the comma. And that kind of made more sense. WWE are trying to find a way to do what they can to make sure that they don't get the name, but who knows? So, um, do I feel happy that they're gone out of WWE? Because yeah, I mean, Filtha, they were not giving the opportunities that they thought. They're not here for their money. They're here to give the art form that they wanted to create, right, with WWE, but they're not getting it. So, do I think they could have a good chance to do that with AEW? Yeah, but let's also keep options open with other promotions like MLW, Impact Wrestling. We don't know if these guys have a sudden interest in the revival. So we just gotta wait and see what happens. So it's a good day for pro wrestling knowing that the revival are now released from WWE, but I don't know if this is gonna be one of those things that WWE will regrets because we know they don't have a solid tag team division in WWE, but we're gonna see what's gonna happen down the line. So if you guys like to see the revival or whatever they're gonna call themselves once they start a new promotion, be in AEW, leave a comment down below, and we'll see from where we're gonna go from there. So I must bid all of you adieu. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Goodbye. Mwah, and have a nice day. Bang.